Part 1. The weight of a sentence. What does not kill me makes me stronger. At first glance, the statement feels bold, defiant, stoic. It conjures images of strength forged through hardship, heroes rising from failure, the phoenix from the flames, the warrior marked by scars but unbowed. We nod in agreement. We even feel empowered. But have we truly understood it? The originator of this aphorism, Friedrich Nietzsche, was not in the business of writing motivational posters. He was a diagnostician of the human soul, a philosopher with the heart of a poet and the mind of a prophet. To read him lightly is to miss him entirely. For Nietzsche, every sentence was a provocation, an invitation not to agree, but to confront. Let's begin with the context. The phrase comes from Twilight of the Idols, one of Nietzsche's last completed works before his mental collapse in 1889. The book is subtitled How to Philosophize with a Hammer, a phrase that suggests both destruction and delicacy. Not the hammer of brute force, but the refined tap of a critic testing the hollowness of modern ideas. Nietzsche's aim was to challenge the idols of his age: Christianity, morality, reason, democracy, even truth itself. The sentence, "What does not kill me makes me stronger," appears in a section called Maxims and Arrows. These are not discursive arguments, they are explosive devices, short, sharp, and meant to detonate in the mind. They pierce through our defenses. They bypass reason and go straight to the marrow. But to truly understand this aphorism, we must resist the temptation to nod and move on. We must sit with it, turn it over, explore its layers. Because Nietzsche is not offering comfort. He is offering a test, a philosophy of the forge. Nietzsche's entire philosophy revolves around a central theme: becoming. He believed that life was not a thing to be preserved, but a force to be expanded. Not a static possession, but a dynamic process. A becoming of what one is. This process is not linear. It is not easy. It involves chaos, rupture, contradiction. It demands that we pass through the fire, that we be broken, and that we respond not with retreat, but with transformation. To become stronger, then, is not merely to recover. It is to transfigure. For Nietzsche, the self is not given. It is made. And it is made through conflict. With the world, with others, and most deeply, with oneself. This is not a popular message in a culture obsessed with safety, comfort, and affirmation. Nietzsche dares to ask, what if safety weakens us? What if comfort dulls us? What if it is precisely through discomfort that we grow? And so, the aphorism takes on a deeper tone. It is no longer a feel-good motto. It is a summons to self-overcoming. But this process is not guaranteed. Not everyone who suffers becomes stronger. Some are shattered. Some never recover. Nietzsche knew this all too well. He was not idealizing pain. He was not preaching resilience without cost. He was saying something much harder. That suffering has potential, but only for those who can metabolize it. Only for those who can convert it into strength. Pain and power. The alchemy of the will. At the heart of Nietzsche's thought lies a concept both radical and elusive: the will to power. This idea has been misinterpreted in countless ways as a call to domination, a justification for violence, a precursor to fascism. But these distortions miss Nietzsche's central insight. The will to power is not primarily about political control. It is about the inner drive of life itself to grow, to expand, to reach beyond what it is. Every living thing, Nietzsche argues, expresses this will, not just in reproduction or survival, but in its drive to become more, to transcend itself. In human beings, this will to power becomes conscious. It becomes art, philosophy, music, poetry. It becomes moral systems and revolutions, but it also becomes repression, denial, guilt, and resentment. The will to power can affirm life, or it can turn inward, corroding from within. Pain is the crucible of this process. It tests the will. It reveals what we are made of. When Nietzsche says, "What does not kill me makes me stronger," he is articulating a vision of life in which power is not control over others, but mastery over one's own becoming. He is pointing to the possibility of turning suffering into strength, not through denial or avoidance, but through confrontation and integration. To grow through suffering is not to escape it. It is to face it, to feel it, to own it, and to emerge with a deeper self. This is a kind of spiritual alchemy. It transforms agony into depth, fear into clarity, despair into resolve. But it demands something rare: courage. Not the courage of battlefields, but the courage to look within, to descend into the underworld of the self, like Nietzsche's Zarathustra, and to return not unchanged, but reborn. The personal cost of a universal truth. It would be easy to think of Nietzsche as a detached thinker, a philosopher crafting theories from the comfort of an armchair. Nothing could be further from the truth. His philosophy was lived intensely, painfully, and at great cost. Nietzsche suffered from chronic illness for most of his adult life: migraines, visual disturbances, digestive disorders, and unrelenting pain. He spent much of his time in solitude, wandering Europe in search of climates that would relieve his condition. He lost friends, faced ridicule, and lived without steady employment or institutional support. His works were dismissed in his lifetime. And yet, through this suffering, he wrote with fire. He produced works of staggering insight and poetic power. He mined his own torment and turned it into wisdom. He did not transcend suffering, he transfigured it. This is why the aphorism matters, not because it offers easy comfort, but because it asks the hardest question. Who will you become through your pain? Nietzsche's answer is both terrifying and liberating. You may become nothing, or you may become more than you imagined. Suffering is not the path, it is the test. To walk it is to gamble everything. But for Nietzsche, that gamble is the essence of life. Part 2. Between Athens and Jerusalem, the roots of Nietzsche's rebellion. To understand the full force of Nietzsche's aphorism, we must place it against the vast backdrop of Western thought. Nietzsche did not write in a vacuum. He was reacting violently, passionately, to a tradition he saw as decaying. At the heart of that tradition was a moral and metaphysical inheritance Nietzsche traced back to two sources: Athens and Jerusalem. From Athens we received philosophy, the rational pursuit of truth. Socrates, with his dialectics and his insistence on ethical inquiry, was the godfather of Western reason. From Jerusalem we inherited religion, above all, Christianity, with its emphasis on compassion, humility, sin, and redemption. Nietzsche saw both as corrupted by what he called life-denying instincts. In The Birth of Tragedy, his first major work, Nietzsche contrasts the Apollonian and the Dionysian, two forces he believed shaped Greek culture. The Apollonian represents order, clarity, rationality. The Dionysian stands for chaos, ecstasy, suffering, and creative destruction. Socrates, in Nietzsche's view, overthrew the Dionysian spirit with a shallow rationalism. He made reason into a tyrant. He turned away from the tragic beauty of life and insisted instead on dialectic and virtue. Nietzsche did not despise reason per se, but he believed that when reason becomes detached from life, from instinct, from the body, it becomes a prison. With Christianity, the problem was even worse. For Nietzsche, Christianity was a slave morality. It glorified weakness, praised suffering for its own sake, and turned resentment, envy, and bitterness into virtue. Here, we see the deeper meaning of what does not kill me makes me stronger. It is not just a statement about individual endurance, it is a rejection of victimhood as a moral ideal. Nietzsche is saying, strength is not sin, ambition is not evil, suffering is not to be worshipped, but overcome. In this way, the aphorism stands as a declaration of war against pity, against moralism, against all those values that Nietzsche believed had made Europe sick. It is a call to reclaim vitality, not to deny pain, but to refuse to be defined by it. The psychology of becoming. Let us now turn inward, to the soul. In many ways, Nietzsche anticipates modern psychology. Long before Freud or Jung, he understood that the human mind is not transparent to itself, that consciousness is not the ruler, but a surface, that beneath our moral convictions lie instincts, drives, traumas, and shadows. And so, when Nietzsche speaks of becoming stronger, he is not speaking only of physical endurance or social resilience. He is speaking of psychological integration. This is where we can bring in the metaphor of the shadow, later made famous by Carl Jung. The shadow is the part of ourselves we disown, the rage, the fear, the pain, the jealousy, the grief. What we refuse to face, we repress. But what we repress does not disappear. It festers. It controls us from below. Nietzsche understood this. He saw that most people avoid their suffering not because they are weak, but because they are afraid of what it will show them about themselves. To become stronger, in Nietzsche's sense, is to turn toward the shadow, to descend into the dark, to bring up what we've buried, to integrate what we fear. This is not therapy in the modern sense. It is something deeper, something mythic. The ancient Greeks had a word for this journey: katabasis, the descent into the underworld. Heroes like Orpheus, Odysseus, and Hercules all ventured into the realm of the dead. But the true underworld is within, and the descent is psychological. Nietzsche's Zarathustra speaks again and again of descending, of going under, of breaking down, and always of rising again. Each fall is a test, each crisis is a gateway. The abyss is not the end, it is the place of transformation. What does not kill me makes me stronger is, in this light, a map of the soul's descent and return. It is a mythic pattern, a spiral of death and rebirth, against fragility. In the modern world, we often speak of trauma, of safe spaces, of triggers, of protection. These are not bad things. There is wisdom in being kind to ourselves. There is value in healing. But Nietzsche asks us to question, are we confusing fragility for virtue? Are we making weakness into an identity? He warns against a culture of moralized suffering, a culture in which victimhood is power and pain is proof of righteousness. For Nietzsche, this is the worst outcome. It is not just that we suffer, but that we learn to cling to our suffering, to wear it like a badge, to use it as a weapon, to demand that others accommodate our wounds rather than challenging ourselves to grow beyond them. This is not to blame the wounded. Nietzsche does not mock the broken. He himself was broken. What he offers is not condemnation, but challenge. He is saying, your pain is. Part 3. Existentialism and the trial of the individual. Nietzsche's influence did not end with the end of his sanity. In fact, it began there. After his collapse in 1889, his writings were largely unknown outside academic circles. But in the 20th century, as Europe descended into chaos, 2 world wars, mass death, the rise and fall of ideologies, Nietzsche's words began to speak more powerfully than ever. What does not kill me makes me stronger became not just a personal maxim, but a mirror held up to an age of catastrophe. When millions were forced to endure, to survive unthinkable horror, Nietzsche's aphorism echoed with both promise and provocation. It was during this time that existentialism took root. Philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, Albert Camus, and Martin Heidegger picked up Nietzsche's challenge. Though each had their own direction, they shared a common insight. Existence precedes essence. There is no fixed self, no given purpose. We are not born with meaning. We must create it. But to create meaning is to suffer, to choose, to act, to take responsibility. These are burdens. They expose us to risk, to failure, to anguish. Camus spoke of the absurd. Sartre wrote of nausea. Heidegger described anxiety as the mood in which we confront the nothingness of being. Nietzsche anticipated all of this. His aphorism is not a celebration of strength for its own sake. It is a reflection on what it means to survive in a world without guarantees, without gods, without eternal truths. When the structures fall away, when faith collapses, when reason falters, when history devours itself, what remains? The will. The human will to continue, to stand, to affirm. Even when affirmation has no justification. Even when life offers no promises. Even when death hovers at the edge of every decision. To say, what does not kill me makes me stronger in this context is not triumphalism. It is not arrogance. It is existential defiance. It is the courage to live without illusions, the abyss and the gaze. Another famous line from Nietzsche comes from Beyond Good and Evil. He who fights with monsters should take care lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze long into the abyss also gazes into you. Here, again, we encounter the danger of suffering, the danger of transformation. To become stronger is not a purely positive act. It changes us, sometimes in ways we do not like, sometimes at the cost of our innocence. Nietzsche is warning us. Strength is not sainthood. It is not purity. It may come with scars on the soul, with blood on the hands, with darkness in the heart. This is the shadow side of the aphorism. To survive trauma is not always ennobling. It can make us cold, suspicious, hardened. And yet Nietzsche does not shy away. He does not say we should avoid this danger. He says, own it, know it, walk into the abyss with open eyes, because to become stronger is not to become better in the moral sense. It is to become more whole, more capable, more real. The goal is not to be untouchable, but to be unbreakable. Not because we are hard, but because we are deep. Depth is Nietzsche's true measure of strength, not the superficial strength of power or pride, but the subterranean strength of someone who has met the abyss and emerged intact. Not unchanged, never unchanged, but truer. Resentment and the tyranny of the past. Nietzsche often writes about resentment, a concept central to his critique of modern morality. Resentment is not simply resentment. It is a psychological reversal, a moral alchemy that turns weakness into virtue and strength into vice. It happens when we suffer, but instead of transforming our suffering, we weaponize it. We tell ourselves that our pain is proof of our goodness, that those who hurt us are evil, that we are righteous because we are wronged. In this way, we cling to the past. We let it define us. We become prisoners of our wounds. Nietzsche saw this tendency most vividly in Christianity, which he believed had elevated suffering into a spiritual good. But resentment exists everywhere, in politics, in identity, in art, even in love. To say, "What does not kill me makes me stronger," is to reject resentment. It is to say, "My pain is not my identity. I will not remain small to prove a point. I will not shrink into victimhood to gain sympathy. I will not demand the world change to accommodate my brokenness. Instead, I will take what happened and use it. I will grow teeth. I will grow wings. I will become someone who cannot be undone. Not because I forget the past, but because I refuse to be ruled by it." The artist as alchemist. Nietzsche had a profound love of art. He began his career as a classical philologist. He worshipped the tragic playwrights of Greece. He revered the music of Wagner, until Wagner betrayed his ideals. For Nietzsche, the artist was not a decorator of life, but its highest expression. Art is what makes suffering bearable. More than that, art is what makes suffering beautiful. This is the final and highest meaning of the aphorism. To become stronger through what does not kill us is to become an artist of existence, to turn wounds into wisdom, scars into sculpture, tears into poetry. This is not metaphor. It is existential necessity. When the world is silent, art speaks. When meaning collapses, art creates. The artist does not escape life. The artist intensifies it, lives it more fully, drinks its bitterest wine and dares to say yes. Nietzsche's concept of amor fati, the love of fate, is the culmination of this spirit. Not acceptance, not tolerance, love. To love even our suffering, to love even the moments that nearly destroyed us, to look at the worst thing that happened and say, "Thank you." Without you, I would not be what I am. This is strength. This is transformation. This is Nietzsche's challenge and his gift. Part 4. Echoes through the modern soul. Nietzsche's aphorism has become a cultural mantra, quoted by athletes and artists, soldiers and survivors, therapists and entrepreneurs. It is one of the most well-known expressions in the modern lexicon, but its very familiarity can render it hollow. What once rang with fire may now echo like cliché. To reclaim the depth of Nietzsche's insight, we must strip away the motivational slogans and return to the existential soil from which it grew. Because Nietzsche was not offering comfort, he was offering confrontation. He did not say, "You will become stronger." He said, "You might." The unspoken possibility remains, or you might not. Resilience versus transformation. Modern psychology often speaks of resilience, the ability to bounce back from trauma or stress. It is a valuable concept, but it is not Nietzsche's concept. Resilience implies a return to baseline, a restoration of equilibrium. Nietzsche is not interested in returning to what we were. He is interested in becoming what we could be. What does not kill me does not leave me unchanged. It reshapes me. It exposes fault lines I didn't know were there. It burns away illusions. It reveals truths too sharp for the peaceful mind. Trauma can destroy, but it can also reveal the raw material of transformation. Not a return, but a reinvention. This idea echoes in Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, a work forged in the crucible of the Holocaust. Frankl, a psychiatrist and death camp survivor, did not quote Nietzsche lightly. He lived his words, and he came to believe that meaning could be found even in the worst suffering. Not because suffering is good, but because in the face of suffering, we are given the chance to choose. And it is that choice, how we respond, that reveals and builds our strength. The death of the old self. Every genuine transformation contains a death. Sometimes it is small, a shedding of skin. Sometimes it is catastrophic, the shattering of an entire identity. When Nietzsche speaks of becoming stronger, he does not mean that the self merely adds armor. He means the self dies and something deeper emerges. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he speaks of the three metamorphoses of the spirit: the camel, the lion, and the child. The camel is the burden bearer. It says yes to duty, to tradition, to suffering imposed from above. The lion is the rebel. It says no. It fights the dragon of "thou shalt." But the highest form is the child, the one who creates new values, who says yes again, but this time freely. This is the stage of creation. The aphorism lives in this journey. First we suffer under weight, then we rage against it. Then, if we are brave enough, we reinvent ourselves. We do not just endure, we become. Post-traumatic growth. In the last few decades, psychologists have studied a phenomenon they call post-traumatic growth. Unlike resilience, this does not mean bouncing back, but bouncing forward. People who experience major trauma, loss, illness, war, existential crisis, sometimes emerge not merely intact, but transformed. They report greater appreciation for life, deeper relationships, stronger sense of self, a shift in values, a reordering of priorities. They are not naive. They do not minimize what happened, but they are changed, and often, strangely, grateful. This mirrors Nietzsche's amor fati, the love of one's fate, to say, I would not choose this. But now that it has happened, I will not turn from it. I will use it. I will fold it into my being. This is not positivity. It is not denial. It is alchemy. It is taking lead and turning it into gold, and it is perhaps the only response worthy of the suffering we endure. Suffering in the age of comfort. We live in an age that worships comfort, convenience, safety, ease. Technological and medical advances have freed us from many of the harsh realities that once defined human life. This is not a bad thing, but it comes with a cost. We have lost the rituals of pain. We have forgotten how to suffer meaningfully. Nietzsche feared this. He saw in the modern world the rise of what he called the last man, a creature of safety, of mediocrity, of shallow contentment. He does not dream. He does not risk. He avoids suffering at all costs. But in avoiding suffering, he avoids life. Nietzsche's aphorism cuts through this illusion. It reminds us, the deepest parts of you will not come from peace. They will come from the struggle to create peace within a storm. What does not kill me makes me stronger, not because I enjoy pain, but because I have learned to extract meaning from it, to walk through it with integrity, to let it chisel me into form. Comfort cannot do this. Only the furnace can. The mirror of literature. Literature is filled with Nietzschean souls. In Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov, even rebels against a God who allows suffering, and yet suffering leads Alyosha to profound spiritual compassion. In Toni Morrison's Beloved, pain and memory are ghosts, but love and the refusal to be defined by the past becomes a kind of resurrection. In Hemingway, the code is stoicism, dignity in the face of despair, the old man and the sea, battered, defeated, but not broken. A man can be destroyed, but not defeated. These are Nietzsche's children, not because they quote him, but because they live the drama of the aphorism. They face death, they face despair, and they do not flinch. They suffer, and from that suffering, they become. Part 5. The Ethics of Strength. To become stronger through suffering is not, Nietzsche would insist, a moral act. Strength, for him, is not inherently good. It is beyond good and evil. This is one of the most uncomfortable aspects of his thought. Strength is dangerous. It can create beauty or tyranny. It can heal or dominate. And yet Nietzsche returns to it again and again, because it is real, because it is raw, because it resists illusion. This complicates the aphorism. What does not kill me makes me stronger. We cannot read it merely as encouragement. It is also a warning. Power and the will. At the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy is der Wille zur Macht, the will to power. This is not merely the desire for control over others, but the deeper drive to assert, to express, to become. Every living thing has it. A tree growing toward the sun, a bird defending its nest, a child taking her first step. It is the movement of life itself, toward expansion, toward form, toward self-overcoming. When we suffer, that will is tested. Will we shrink? Will we collapse? Or will we push forward, deeper, truer? The will to power is not about domination. It is about transformation. But here is the tension. If strength is immoral, what restrains it? This is the ethical question Nietzsche leaves us with. Not a simple answer, but a challenge. He does not prescribe goodness. He demands authenticity. He asks, what are you willing to become? Are you willing to pay the price of growth? Are you willing to own the darkness that made you? Are you willing to carry your strength with dignity? Choosing to grow. One of the most radical implications of Nietzsche's aphorism is that it implies a choice. Not the choice to suffer. Suffering often finds us without permission, but the choice of what we do with our suffering. This is where Nietzsche becomes most demanding. He is not content with survival. He wants us to create value from our pain. He wants us to become artists of existence, to shape experience into form, to transmute chaos into character. And this is hard, because it means we cannot passively wait for time to heal us. It means healing is not a return, but a becoming. It means no one else can do it for us. You must look into the wound. You must extract meaning from it yourself. You must stand up and say, I will not be less because of this. That is Nietzsche's ideal, not the unbroken one, but the one who has been broken and forged anew. Strength without cruelty. But is it enough to become strong? What if that strength turns cold, turns cruel? This is a question Nietzsche's critics often raise, and for good reason. After all, history is littered with those who believed their suffering gave them the right to dominate others. Empires, revolutions, ideologies born in blood, all justifying themselves through narratives of past injustice. Nietzsche knew this danger. He saw it in resentment, the turning of pain into moral superiority, the transformation of the weak into self-righteous avengers. But he also saw the opposite danger, the worship of victimhood, the moral fetishization of suffering, the idea that pain itself confers virtue. Nietzsche rejects both. He wants strength that is creative, not vindictive. He wants strength that rises, not reacts. He wants strength that dances, like his eternal image of Dionysus, the god of joy and destruction, of ecstasy and fate. True strength for Nietzsche is not the power to control others. It is the power to become yourself, and to do so without bitterness, without cruelty, without turning your pain into a weapon, the mirror of the modern world. We live in a time that both glorifies and fears strength. On the one hand, we are told to hustle, to grind, to be alpha. Strength as dominance, as productivity, as relentless ambition. On the other hand, we are told to be vulnerable, to be open, to be soft. Strength as authenticity, as empathy, as healing. Nietzsche does not fit into either mold. His strength is paradoxical. It is fierce but introspective. It is solitary but world-affirming. It is brutal but also, in a strange way, tender. Because it does not seek applause. It does not seek justification. It seeks only this, to affirm life. to say yes to all of it. Even the darkness, even the despair, even the days we almost did not make it. The strength to affirm. Affirmation is Nietzsche's ultimate act, not celebration, not naive optimism, but a full-bodied, defiant, cosmic yes. To say, I do not need my pain to be explained. I do not need it to be fair. I do not need it to have purpose imposed from without, because I will make my own purpose. I will take the chaos, and I will weave it into myself. I will be the loom on which suffering becomes strength, not in spite of what I endured, but because of it. Not because I deserved it, but because I dared to answer it. This is what Nietzsche asks of us, not to survive, but to transfigure, not to endure, but to create, not to be made strong by what does not kill us, but to make ourselves strong through the refusal to be undone. Part 6. The individual versus the herd. At the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy lies a profound solitude. He speaks not to the crowd, but to the singular, to the soul standing at the edge of the abyss. His aphorism is not a rallying cry. It is a whisper across time, meant for the one who suffers alone, without applause, without comfort, without witnesses. So we must ask, what does it mean to grow stronger in a world that often defines us by the groups we belong to? Can the Nietzschean ideal survive in a world of movements, hashtags, shared grievances, and collective trauma? Or does it dissolve into noise? The herd instinct. Nietzsche often writes with contempt about the herd. This is not simply a critique of the masses, it is a deeper concern with conformity, with the fear of standing alone, with the instinct to dissolve one's uniqueness into shared norms and collective narratives. In Beyond Good and Evil, he writes, "Insanity in individuals is something rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule." For Nietzsche, the herd does not encourage strength. It encourages sameness. It tells you how to suffer, how to express pain, how to behave. But becoming stronger, truly stronger, requires deviation. It requires questioning the values handed down to you. It requires stepping outside the tribe, risking rejection, and embracing solitude. In a society obsessed with visibility, Nietzsche asks us to become invisible to others, so that we might become visible to ourselves. Collective trauma versus personal growth. Modern discourse is saturated with the language of collective trauma, generational wounds, systemic oppression, inherited grief. These are real. They are historical. They shape who we are before we even speak. But Nietzsche reminds us, even in a world of systemic forces, there remains the individual will. Even in chains, the soul may choose its posture. This is not to deny injustice. Nietzsche is not interested in erasing history, but he is deeply suspicious of those who allow inherited pain to become their identity. Pain is a crucible. It can form or deform. But if it becomes a permanent badge, if it becomes the foundation of self, then growth ceases. Strength, for Nietzsche, requires that we wrest ourselves from the inertia of collective resentment. It means asking, what do I make of this pain? Not who caused it, but who am I becoming through it? The myth of the Übermensch. Nietzsche's Übermensch, the overman or higher human, is often misunderstood. He is not a conqueror, not a superhuman. He is the one who creates values out of his own depths. He is beyond victimhood, beyond blame, beyond the morality of resentment. But this vision is radically individual. It is lonely. It does not march in lockstep. It dances to music no one else hears. So we must ask, can there be a collective Übermensch? Can a culture, a people, a generation as a whole grow stronger through suffering? Or is this only a myth we tell ourselves? History suggests that it is individuals who lead such transformations, and often they are exiled, ignored, or destroyed in their time. Jesus, Socrates, Hypatia, Galileo, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche himself, but their strength radiates beyond them, like torches passed hand to hand in the dark. So perhaps the answer is paradoxical. Collective strength arises not from consensus, but from the courage of individuals who choose to grow when others retreat. Affirming in a fractured world. Our world is fractured, polarized, overstimulated, exhausted. People are pulled into echo chambers, tribal identities, algorithmic outrage. In such a world, Nietzsche's aphorism becomes harder and more vital. Because to say, "What does not kill me makes me stronger," is to reject the easy story. It is to resist both victimhood and vengeance. It is to carve meaning from pain not by joining a chorus, but by composing a solo. And yet, we must acknowledge the danger here. Nietzsche's call to self-overcoming can be misused. It can become an excuse to ignore injustice, a license to dismiss the suffering of others, a justification for power without compassion. But Nietzsche never asked us to be unfeeling. He asked us to feel deeply, but to go further, to move from grief to creation, to move from anger to affirmation, to move from despair to becoming. The ethics of being misunderstood. Nietzsche knew he would be misunderstood. He knew the crowd would twist his words, take what they wanted, ignore the rest. He once wrote, "I am not a man. I am dynamite. Not a blueprint, not a prophet, a force, and forces are dangerous. They do not come with instructions." So the aphorism, "What does not kill me makes me stronger," must be handled carefully. It is not a slogan to impose on others. It is not a critique of those who have not healed. It is not a denial of fragility. It is a challenge to oneself, to go deeper, to be honest, to ask, what have I made of my pain? Have I allowed it to calcify into blame, or have I dared to transmute it into strength? This is not about becoming untouchable. It is about becoming real, unshakable, not because we are hard, but because we are whole. Part 7. Strength in the shadow of eternity. Nietzsche's most enigmatic and haunting concept is the eternal recurrence, the idea that every moment, every breath, every joy and agony in your life must be lived again eternally. No escape, no edits, no forgetting. He poses it first as a question in The Gay Science. What if a demon crept after you into your loneliest loneliness some day or night and said to you, "This life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more"? Would you not throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon who spoke thus? And then, he asks, or have you once experienced a tremendous moment when you would have answered him, "You are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine"? It is here that Nietzsche's aphorism about strength takes on its most harrowing weight. What if the suffering that nearly broke you must return? What if you must relive your losses, your griefs, your betrayals, not once, but infinitely? Would you still say it made you stronger? Would you still say it was worth it? The willing of one's fate. Nietzsche calls the acceptance of this recurrence amor fati, the love of one's fate. To not merely bear life, but to embrace it in its totality. Not just the light, but the darkness. Not just the joy, but the horror. Not just the triumph, but the ruin. This is the ultimate test of strength. Not the strength to endure, but the strength to affirm, to look your life in the face and say, "I would live you again." Not because it was easy, but because it was mine, because I met it with my full being, because I became who I am through it. Nietzsche's existential alchemy. Eternal recurrence is not a cosmology. It is not a literal belief in cyclical time. It is an existential test, a thought experiment. It asks you to weigh your life, not against the judgments of others, but against the scale of eternity. It asks, if you had to live this again, would you curse it, or would you dance? This is not abstract, it is intimate. It turns every moment sacred, every choice eternal. It is a demand that we become so attuned to our life, so integrated with our suffering, that even our darkest nights would be welcomed again, because they are part of the form, the melody, the art of our existence. And this is what it means to be made stronger, not to become immune to pain, but to integrate it so deeply that you would choose it again. Death as gateway to life. To affirm eternal recurrence is to stare directly into the meaning of death and say, I do not need death to escape my suffering. I need death only to sanctify my life, because only in the face of death does life burn bright enough to be affirmed. Nietzsche writes, "The greatest weight, is it not terrible to crush you? Or do you not want to be crushed under it? You say yes to one moment, you say yes to all." This is the moment of decision. Do you seek strength only to avoid pain? Or do you seek strength so that you can say yes, even to pain? Because if strength is merely avoidance, it is cowardice in disguise. But if strength is acceptance, radical, unflinching, wholehearted acceptance, then it becomes sacred. Then it becomes worthy of eternity, becoming the flame. Nietzsche once said, "One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. But a star is not born by accident. It is forged in pressure, in gravity, in fire. To live as though you would live your life again, infinitely, is to become a flame. It is to allow yourself to burn away the false, the shallow, the borrowed meanings. It is to live as if every act matters. Because under eternal recurrence, it does. If you betray yourself now, you will betray yourself forever. If you shrink from the suffering now, you will shrink from it eternally. But if you rise, if you transfigure pain into power, then that too is eternal. Then you have become what Nietzsche calls a destiny. To affirm is to be free. The irony is that by imagining ourselves trapped in infinite recurrence, Nietzsche frees us. Because in that moment we realize, I cannot control what happens, but I can control how I meet it. And if I meet it fully, without bitterness, without regret, without illusion, then I have already won. I have said yes to life, not the life I wanted, not the life I planned, but the life I have, and the self I become within it. Strength beyond the grave. This aphorism, "What does not kill me makes me stronger," rings most truly when placed in the shadow of death. Not because it defies death, but because it honors it. Every pain that did not destroy us became part of our becoming. Every moment we thought we could not survive, but did, etched something eternal into our being. And if we live as though we must live it again, then we are forced to make it meaningful. We are forced to become, and in that becoming, we realize it is not death that makes us afraid. It is unlived life. It is strength unclaimed. It is pain endured without transformation. Nietzsche challenges us to make our life so deep, so powerful, so ours, that even eternal return cannot diminish it, that even death cannot undo it. Part 8. Nietzsche versus the Age of Therapy. We live in a time where healing has become an industry, where therapy is a rite of passage and trauma a language we are all expected to speak, where vulnerability is valorized, where mental health is framed as the path to wholeness, and wholeness as the promise of peace. But Nietzsche doesn't promise peace. He promises struggle. He doesn't offer safety. He offers fire. And so, his aphorism, "What does not kill me makes me stronger," often feels alien, even offensive, in the therapeutic age. It's seen as a minimization of suffering, a stoic dismissal, a dangerous lie. But Nietzsche is not offering comfort. He is offering confrontation. The therapeutic paradigm. Modern therapy, at its best, teaches us to identify patterns, process emotions, and build inner awareness. It encourages self-compassion, regulation, boundaries, and resilience. It offers space to speak the unspeakable, but it also contains assumptions Nietzsche would challenge. First, that we are primarily wounded. Second, that healing comes through understanding. Third, that peace is the goal. Nietzsche would resist all three, not because he is against introspection, but because he sees danger in the story we tell ourselves when we believe healing is the same as soothing. Beyond healing. For Nietzsche, suffering is not a problem to be solved. It is a power to be transfigured. Not every wound is meant to be closed. Not every pain needs to be pacified. Some sufferings must be integrated, not erased. Nietzsche dares to ask a terrifying question. What if your trauma is the soil of your transformation? Not in the sentimental sense of everything happens for a reason. He would scoff at such consolation. But in the harder, deeper sense, what if the very pain you want to escape is the doorway to who you might become? This is not therapeutic. It is mythic. The self as art, not diagnosis. The therapeutic model often treats the self as a system to be debugged, as a network of symptoms, schemas, patterns, and triggers. But Nietzsche treats the self as a sculpture. You are not to be diagnosed. You are to be created, forged, broken, reforged again. You are an artwork under eternal revision. And sometimes, what looks like damage is simply the cracking open of a deeper form. To Nietzsche, healing is not the restoration of your former self. It is the destruction of your false self and the birth of a truer one. Trauma without tragedy. Trauma is real. Nietzsche does not deny it, but he refuses to let it define you. He warns against turning suffering into identity, against using pain as a shield, against moralizing wounds. He sees in this a new form of weakness, not the fragility of the body, but the fragility of meaning. To Nietzsche, strength is not in denying trauma, but in refusing to become only a victim of it. It is in asking, what will I do with what was done to me? Not once, but eternally. Because in the logic of eternal recurrence, the question is not how do I heal, but how do I become someone who could live this again? The cult of comfort. Nietzsche was skeptical of comfort. He believed we had traded greatness for security, depth for safety, wildness for wellness. In his time, he railed against religion and morality as sedatives. In ours, he might say the same of therapy, social media validation, or mindfulness apps. Not because these things are wrong, but because they risk becoming substitutes for actual transformation. They offer the feeling of change without the sacrifice. They offer narratives of empowerment without the crucible. They offer the simulation of growth without the danger of becoming. Nietzsche's path to strength does not coddle. It calls for rupture, for dissent, for solitude. It calls for choosing the harder path, not because it is noble, but because it is necessary. Because only through challenge do we create the depth that allows us to endure. The artist of the self. In Ecce Homo, Nietzsche writes, "The great pain that does not kill awakens the deepest forces within. It is pain that transforms." Here, he does not ask you to process your feelings. He asks you to sculpt them, to take grief and forge it into insight, to take rejection and refine it into clarity, to take despair and stretch it toward the horizon of becoming. This is no longer therapy. This is alchemy. You are not a patient. You are Prometheus. You are Daedalus. You are the artist of your own abyss. Responsibility without blame. Nietzsche's vision of strength does not come with moral judgment. He does not say the strong are better people. He does not blame the weak. But he does offer a choice: to remain in the inertia of pain, or to turn suffering into motion. This is not about fairness. It is about fire. The fire of will, the fire of creation, the fire that says, even if no one sees me heal, even if no one validates it, I will become stronger. Not because I should, but because I can. And because if I don't, the pain wins. What the world cannot give. Nietzsche demands something therapy cannot give you: He demands self-overcoming, not the elimination of symptoms, but the forging of soul, not the management of triggers, but the awakening of power. He asks you to meet suffering not as a victim, not as a client, not even as a survivor, but as a creator. To ask, always, what kind of being can emerge from this wreckage? And then, to become it, not with permission, not with apology, but with the full force of your becoming. Part 9. Strength without redemption. In the long tradition of Western thought, suffering is often framed as something to be redeemed. In Christianity, suffering finds purpose through God's will. Pain is part of a divine plan. The cross leads to resurrection, the fall to salvation. Tears are temporary. Paradise awaits. In secular culture, we've inherited this logic, even without theology. We still crave happy endings. We expect trauma to teach us lessons, pain to make us wise, and struggle to reward us. We want the arc to bend toward justice. We want narrative closure. But Nietzsche rips this scaffolding away. He asks, what if suffering has no cosmic purpose? What if there is no redemption? What if the universe does not owe you a reason? Can you still become stronger, knowing that your suffering might be entirely without meaning, except the meaning you carve into it yourself? This is the Nietzschean abyss, and it is where strength is truly tested. The rejection of consolation. Nietzsche is merciless with false consolation. He does not believe that everything happens for a reason. He does not believe that things will get better. He does not even believe that truth will save you. He once wrote, "Man does not strive for happiness. Only the Englishman does that." Instead, he urges you to strive for power, not power over others, but power over yourself. Power to transfigure. Power to endure the unendurable. Power to look into the void and not look away. So when he says, "What does not kill me makes me stronger," he means it without hope. Not stronger for some eventual reward. Not stronger because it was worth it. Stronger because you became something else. Period. Stronger because your will refused to be annihilated. This is not the path of healing. It is the path of becoming. Meaning without guarantee. Nietzsche's challenge is not simply to survive suffering, but to refuse the cheap stories we tell ourselves to justify it. No fate, no justice, no redemption arc. Only your will, your response, your creation of meaning, ex nihilo. He asks, can you take the broken pieces of your life and build something beautiful, not because it will be remembered or rewarded or redeemed, but because it is yours? This is the weight of freedom. No God to blame, no devil to fight, no afterlife to explain it all. Only this moment, only this scar, only this breath. And still, you rise. The aesthetic justification of existence. In The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche proposes that life is justified not by truth, but by beauty. It is only as an aesthetic phenomenon that existence and the world are eternally justified. This changes everything. Your suffering does not need to be explained. It needs to be transfigured into art, into character, into something beautiful. not in the shallow sense of prettiness, but in the deep sense of form, coherence, tension, weight, and the echo of eternity. You do not need to be saved. You need to be sculpted. Even if no one else sees the sculpture, even if it crumbles into dust, the act of becoming is the only justification. Suffering as the crucible of the soul. Imagine the human soul not as something given, but as something forged, like a sword. It begins as raw metal, shapeless, vulnerable, useless. It must be melted, hammered, cooled, broken and reforged. This is what Nietzsche means by strength. Not immunity from pain, but the capacity to endure its fire without guarantee. Because the fire might not make you good. It might not make you peaceful. It might not even make you happy, but it will make you real. It will make you deep. It will carve out chambers of soul that were not there before. The lie of closure. Modern culture teaches us to seek closure. We want to move on, to make peace, to heal. But Nietzsche offers no closure. He offers recurrence. He offers echoes. He offers the same wound, returned again and again, asking only one question. What are you now? Not what happened to you, but what have you done with it? And even more, can you affirm it? Not because it was good, but because it was yours. Strength as affirmation without excuse. To become stronger, in Nietzsche's sense, is not to explain your past. It is to own it, not to absolve it, not to justify it, not to say it made me who I am, but to choose who you are in its aftermath, and to affirm that choice without appeal. This is terrifying. It means there are no excuses, no fallback narratives, only your will, only your becoming, only your yes in praise of the irredeemable. Nietzsche does not want to turn suffering into something noble. He does not romanticize pain. He does not preach martyrdom. He honors the irredeemable. He says, even if your suffering cannot be made right, even if your pain had no meaning, still you can become something through it. Still, you can say yes. This is not triumph. This is not healing. This is strength, raw, solitary, unflinching, the strength of one who walks forward, even when the path is broken, even when the sky is silent, even when the story makes no sense, becoming the meaning itself. At the final edge, Nietzsche asks something almost inhuman: to become not someone who finds meaning, but someone who is meaning, to be the answer to your suffering, to be the song your pain becomes, to be the form that justifies the fire. This is the ultimate strength, not survival, not recovery, not redemption, but creation. You become the artist of the abyss, and in that act, you do not erase your suffering. You transmute it, you crown it, you give it a name. And that name is yours. Part 10. Becoming Flame, the eternal affirmation of life. Nietzsche does not offer you salvation. He offers you the mirror. He offers you the hammer. And if you accept his challenge, he offers you something greater than consolation. He offers you the possibility of becoming flame. What does not kill me makes me stronger is not just a comment on resilience. It is a seed. a seed of a new kind of existence, a mode of being that is no longer built around fear, guilt, or hope for redemption, but around the ceaseless will to become. And this becoming, at its highest point, leads us to the most demanding idea in all of Nietzsche's philosophy: eternal recurrence, the test of eternal return. Imagine, Nietzsche says, that one day a demon comes to you in your loneliest solitude and says, "This life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. Every pain and joy and every thought and sigh must return to you, all in the same sequence. Would you collapse in despair, or would you rejoice?" This is not a metaphysical doctrine. It is an existential test, a test of your life, a test of your strength. It asks not, was your life justified? But, could you will it again? Every failure, every heartbreak, every humiliation, every morning you wished you had not woken up, could you will it all? Not because it was pleasant, not because it made you stronger in a motivational sense, but because it was yours. Because you turned your pain into a forge, your fear into fuel, your suffering into song. Because your life, as it is, without anything subtracted, is your great work of art. This is the apex of Nietzsche's challenge: to become so strong, not in body, but in soul, that you could look at your entire existence and say, yes, again. The will to power as creation. The will to power is not about domination. It is about expansion, form-giving, self-shaping. It is the will to shape chaos into cosmos, to take the raw material of your experience and impose upon it the stamp of your character, to become a creator, not of doctrines, but of values, not of systems, but of style. To look at the chaos of your life and say, let there be form, let there be rhythm, let there be something beautiful here, even if no one else sees it. This is strength. This is power. Not the power to control the world, but the power to shape yourself in the face of a world that does not care. The artist of existence. Nietzsche's highest figure, the Übermensch, the Overman, is not a tyrant or a superhuman in the comic book sense. He is the artist of existence, one who does not demand that life conform to his desires, one who dances with fate, not in resentment, but in affirmation, one who has gone through fire, through solitude, through madness, and returned not with answers, but with laughter. Not because nothing matters, but because everything matters, and he has chosen to bear it without illusion. This is not a passive acceptance. It is not stoic resignation. It is the most radical act of will, to affirm life as it is, to want nothing to be different, not because it is perfect, but because it is yours, because it has become your crucible, your furnace, your stage. From strength to flame strength, for Nietzsche, is not a fixed state. It is a becoming that burns away everything false. It is not the absence of weakness, but the willingness to transmute it. To say, yes, I was broken. Yes, I was small. Yes, I was afraid. And still, I became fire. You become strong, not by silencing the scream, but by turning it into music. Not by escaping suffering, but by walking through it until it shines. Not by seeking the divine, but by becoming the storm the gods would fear. This is why Nietzsche ends not with systems, but with style. Not with commandments, but with dance. Not with dogma, but with aphorism. Because the strongest soul is not the one who knows, it is the one who creates. The affirmation of life without remainder. What does not kill me makes me stronger. This is not a formula. It is a fire test, a call to arms, a mirror held up to your soul. It asks, what kind of life could you affirm eternally? It asks, can you will your own suffering, not merely endure it, not merely survive it, but embrace it as the crucible of your becoming? And it offers no reward. Only the truth, only this moment, only this self, naked, wounded, becoming. But if you pass through it, if you do not shrink back, if you make of your scars a sculpture, your sorrow a style, your ruin a rhythm, then perhaps you will understand the force behind Nietzsche's most dangerous idea. Then perhaps you will no longer merely be strong. You will be flame. You will be the affirmation itself. You will say, yes, again, yes.